apple pie. Mm. How are you, Tony? All right? Did you get enough of your baby cat? Have you met John yet? 32 kilowatt today. 27 degrees here. Can you believe that? Gee, it was sunshine nearly all day. We're doing a bit of work outside, actually filling the sun, weren't we? As in, not hot, but it seemed like the UVs are pretty strong. And cold there. Yeah, it stays cold there for a bit longer than here. Up north in our state, we're having 42s, 43s already. I think Broome was 40 today.
Wow.
I think she's going to be a doozy of a summer again. Actually, it's not been cold in the mornings for a while, has it here?
Yes, it has. It is cold.
Well,
in the
cold
morning.
for us, 10, 9. Tony's getting 4s.
Mm.
We used to live in Richmond, just below the Blue Mountains. Jingo. Cold in the mornings there. We would have bushfires. Yeah, we've got bushfires up north here too. NT-WA border. Country's still dry as a bone. Last August, we had something like one day, it was late in August, but it was like 34. Remember that?
Yeah.
Sitting out there with our feet in the dust, sitting on a bench.
Oh, that's right.
Jeez. Not even summer.
Everything seems loud tonight.
I think they pulled someone over. Gotcha. Driver's licence. I was watching news online this morning. Some African American having a dispute with his missus or something. Cops come round, went to get in his car, and they shot him in the back 7 times. It just staggers belief. Can you imagine if you woke up and said somebody in northern New South Wales was trying to get in the car, the cops come up and shot him 7 times in the back? Can you imagine what Australians would say? He's alive, apparently, but paralysed.
I didn't know he was alive still.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, but what's the full
I mean-
story?
Well, the other story is, what about a fucking taser?
No, I'm talking about like, why? Like he was getting in his car obviously to escape or whatever.
I don't know. But the point is, there's a thing called a taser, which renders you useless.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Why
No.
did they do that?
38 caliber, 7 shots in the back. I can't imagine what Australians would wake up in the morning if they heard that had happened here.
Why did they do it? What possessed them to, like, was it just started firing and he couldn't stop, or
Well, you have a choice to fire or not, but yeah, I reckon whoever the cop is, he's gone. And because of that action, a few more people are dead.
so? How many bullets does this gun hold?
I don't know. Yeah, I just can't work out the mentality. There are so many, like, you know, I'm an ex-prison officer. There are so many different holds and pressure points on the human body. You don't have to hit anyone.
No.
And it's like, aren't they trained? I've never put a knee into someone's neck. I've never put my knee into someone's kidneys. But I had to make them squeal just by hitting a few pressure points. You know, the old days, your police officer, where you lived in your area. You'd see him put on his cap in the morning, drive his car out of his house, and he'd be a local bloke. But that doesn't seem to happen anymore. There was a funny one years ago. I was taking a mate of mine, Bevan Rose was his name. He was a sergeant, but he played in the same cricket team as me. And we were driving out to a country town to play cricket. But halfway out there, sirens went off behind me, pulled me over. The guy said, driver's licence? I said, what was I doing? He said, just driver's licence. And Bevan's looking at me. He said, just go along with it. Gave him the driver's licence. He said these words, I'm pretty sure you were speeding. I said, no, mate, I wasn't speeding. And then Bevan leaned over and said, where's your district? Which police office? He said, oh, I'm from Northampton. I said, oh, right. Yeah, I come up to Northampton quite often, he said. And who are you? I'm the sergeant in charge of your section. Now, fuck off, is what Bevan said to him. No, I kid you not. Fuck off. Righto, Sarge. He just wanted to pull in a few numbers for the day and look a bit impressive. I don't think he stayed in the district very long. Yeah, cops were different. Same guy, Bevan. I went out to a party when I was about, I don't know, 21, 22, at a local pub. I had no intention of driving the car. I jumped in the back seat, threw the keys on the front floor, and I was drunk. I mean, I was bad. And I woke up at home, and my car was there. I said, I didn't drive this. Bevan saw me the next day. He said, your car got home all right, and we threw you in the back of the paddy wagon and then put you on the porch. But that was the old days. See, that thing I just mentioned, you know, a policeman playing sport in a community, that has a lot of bearing, that has a lot of impact. They go to the barbecues, they're part of a club, everyone gets to know them. You know, there was always things like teachers and policemen playing sport, so they were intermingling with the community. And there was the odd, you know, obviously crimes going on, but not much. It's a whole new world. Can you feel it coming? Yeah, you live in a small town, so it's still, yeah, you know what I mean then. Everyone knows everyone, and generally if someone's playing up, everyone will say, pull your head in. And you always know who's playing up. Pretty standard. Usually the usual suspects, they're town drunk, kids breaking in just because they can. But at least it's the community. And the loss of community nearly everywhere is pretty bad. I cooked some lamb tonight. It was bloody magnificent. The old Australian meal, meat and 3 veg. Lamb steaks under the grill. I don't know why Americans don't eat sheep. It's got me confused. Gonna get some sleep. You have a good one, mate. Easy on the road. Yeah, we're not going to be on long anyway. So we'd pop on just for a couple. Have you heard how Montana's going over there? Any news about what's happening?
No. I haven't actually.
I'll stay on another 5 minutes if someone crawls in. If not, we'll just shut it down. Hello, old gringo. Wah, wah. Wah, wah, wah. He says good morning to beautiful
Morning.
Mr. Andrews.
I'm playing a game.
Wah, wah.
You told me you saw his boots today.
What?
Saw his boots.
Whose boots?
Our gringos, wherever we were.
Oh yeah, we saw some boots that'd be right up your alley. They were leather. How high were they? They were just no sort of just above ankle, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd like them. O'Fallon, my alternative last name. The luck of the Irish to you, lad. O'Fallon. Yeah. I think have you been to Ireland? I think you said you had, yeah. Beautiful place. you got to go. Well, not at the moment, you can't go, but you will fall in love with the place. Very friendly people. Actually, they're very Australian, actually. We know that because we've got hundreds and thousands of Irishmen live in Australia. It's like being in Australia, but it's greener. Very much greener. Galway, Roscommon border. Yeah, we've been to Galway. It's beautiful there. We had, is that one of the nights we went out to an Irish dance night? Was that Galway?
Yeah,
Galway Castle, then we went out to
the Scottish one.
no, in Ireland.
Oh,
Remember the
yeah,
Irish?
that was a good one. The Scottish one wasn't.
No, the Irish one was good. The Scottish one was very commercial, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wish we hadn't done that, but we didn't know. It was a waste.
No, Scotland was good though. But obviously, not everything you go to. See, if you ever go to a tourist thingy, it's going to be touristy.
Yeah, but listen, if someone else has done it, listen to what they say.
Reminds me of the old Galway song. I met my gal by the gasworks wall, dirty old town. In Hong Kong, when it was still under British management, I was in the US Navy. Me and a fellow named Murphy. Oh dear, oh dear. Find an Australian in a pub overseas. I reckon both of you would have been cack-faced by morning. The Australians will always say to you, Gringo, just one more. Come on, mate, just one more. One for the road. I mean, being in the Navy, because you're sort of stuck on a damn ship, you will certainly let loose when you come into town somewhere. I always found it funny. I'm pretty sure it'd be the same with your Navy. In the Australian Navy, you were allowed to go on shore, but you could be disciplined for being drunk. I always found that quite funny. I'm not sure how often that happened, but you could certainly be disciplined, lose pay, in some cases go on the brig. I always found it funny though, you know, on a ship in Australia, it's the same. In the US, I'm pretty sure, you get a tot of rum every night, or you're entitled to one. It's just the law of the sea. But if you're caught drunk, they can do all sorts of things. I think it was 2 beers last time I remember looking. Or 2 drinks. You could have 2 drinks. And I'm not sure how your guys did it, but it was 2 drinks an hour after your shift finished. So you couldn't just go down and go to the mess and get drinks straight away. You had to shower, have something to eat. The Navy way here is that something in your belly, and then you can have a couple of drinks. No, they still have beer, but it's pretty much rationed. And then, of course, they can just cut it off for any reason. Yeah, I remember a mate of mine, he said, he was in the Australian Navy, he said, yeah, you could have a beer, but you had to have a shower and something to eat first. And if someone caught you going straight to the pub, they knew your shift just finished. There's always handovers on any military situation. So if you were in the engine room, for example, you had to stay 15 minutes, explain what happened of the day, everything's going all right, that's the reading from that boiler, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, you just don't clock off in the Navy. You got a handover. They're the rules, whether it happened a lot or not. Yeah, seems the right thing to do, isn't it? Have a shower, a beer after you've eaten. But a lot of our servicemen in the Navy are in the South China Sea at the moment. And they do go away in different exercises. And they're away for about 14 weeks is pretty much an average, I think. That's a pretty long stint. It's sort of a separate armed force, if you know what I mean. They do get involved with the other armed forces, but literally the ocean is where they work, whereas the Air Force and the Army tend to work more together. But pretty good career for anyone young enough and strong enough to go out and do it. I think in Australia you have to do 20 years. So if you started at, say, 20, you could retire at 40 with a pension in Australia. And the longer you stay, the bigger the pension. They used to do the 3 years, 6, 9, and then repeat. Oh yeah, no. See, they come out swinging a few months ago when Australia wanted to have an inquiry into how and where COVID-19 started in China and wanted a open and public inquiry. Chinese didn't like that, obviously. So they whacked tariffs on things. The problem with China is that they need our gas and our copper and our nickel and, more importantly, our iron ore. So recently, 2 days ago, our Prime Minister stopped investment of Chinese money into takeover bids for companies, and the Chinese are really pissed off. But Australians, to one and all, would say, yep, if we stop trading with China, Australia would suffer, but we'll get over it. So we won't be bullied. So that's where we stand. We're being just sitting back listening to them, and they're whinging and carrying on and putting tariffs and things like that. Well, it was the Chinese who said it started in Wuhan. So it wasn't the Australians who said that. Australia just wants a clear and open inquiry to find out what happened, where it happened, and to make sure it won't happen again. And the Chinese took offence. And it's like, well, just imagine if, say, I came from Perth in Western Australia, went to Wuhan and passed on a virus. And after all the kerfuffle, do you think the Chinese wouldn't say, we want an inquiry? Yeah, they would. China are playing a really big stick game at the moment with many countries, and it's not working out really well for them. Their leader actually is losing face because he's got this big stick. He wants to take back Taiwan, all this nonsense in South China Sea, up in India, threats against the UK because they kicked Huey out. And it's like, it's not working. You can wave a big stick, but it ain't going to work. Yeah, it won't work in Canada either. We will. I mean, as we speak, Canada, the UK and Australia have been having bilateral talks for trade because of the breakup of Brexit for the UK. And the UK buys a lot of stuff us anyway. Canada are getting involved with, so it's a sort of trading thing that's going to happen. Keeping tariffs really low, and also entry visas into Australia for the UK will be really easy, as it will be for Canadians. And it's like we're realising that we've got to stick with our mates, the ones that don't give us a hard time. You can argue about the price of things, there's no problem, but you don't threaten each other. China think that they can just economically threaten countries, they will do what Australia's doing, saying, I tell you what, shove it up your ass. No, the thing about our resources, we can just leave them in the ground, gringo. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we'll lose a few thousand jobs. Australians are pretty resourceful. They'll find something else. The only people that will lose is the mining magnates, the billionaires in Australia. And it'll be like, oh no, we can't have this. We've got to trade. We're trying. And everyone in Australia will say, no, leave it in the ground. Still yours. You can make money later when we find new trade deals. They'll bitch and carry on, trust me. But that's the attitude of Australians. Is like, okay, we'll leave the gas in the ground. We'll leave all the ores in the ground. All our wheat and barley and meat that they get and wine. It was funny yesterday. There's a Chinese newspaper which is not totally controlled by the government, sort of semi. And they had a survey about Chinese and Australian wine. And the survey said, would you still keep buying Australian wine? And the answer was 90% said, yeah, because it's really good wine. So, see, China is supposedly a socialistic state, communism, if you like. However, they want to play in the big park with the rest of the world. So they become not democratic, but they're autocratic. In other words, they're happy to keep their people under control, but they want to trade with the world. If I didn't see another cheap Chinese item coming to Australia, that's okay. And I think one of the things that China is a little worried about is that India is not a huge wealthy country, but they have masses of people that are willing to manufacture. So maybe we'll be getting our TVs from China and all the knickknacks and paddywhacks. In Australia, some of the most common words used when people go into a store is, you got something Australian made? And they go, oh, I've got a few things. Where's the rest stuff come from? Oh, from China? No, I don't want that. There's a huge kickback. How it always works, and there's no doubt about it, is that it's the money in people's pockets that do the talking. So what it will do, no doubt entrepreneurs will start manufacturing in Canada, in England and Australia, because they'll just say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll produce our own. It's going to be a bit dearer. Will you still buy it? And the consumer say, yeah, no worries. And the more they make of it, it will be a simple case of the price will come down. So it's all right saying we're going to threaten you, as China's threatening all these countries. And it's always a monetary thing with China. But their leaders lost face because small countries like Australia have literally said, shove it up your bum. And they're like, you can't talk to us like that? Yeah, we can. We won't buy any of your wine. Okay. We won't have any of your, okay. What, you're not upset? No. We'll be a little bit poorer for the experience, but we'll move on. And then when you can't get iron ore, and you come to us, instead of paying $150 a tonne, it'll be $1,000 a tonne. How's that? How's that fit? Maoist. See, the Chinese system, look, I mean, without being silly, it's the same, probably not in Canada and Australia, and not the UK, but in other Western cultures. They're all oligarchies now. It's like the rich, the super rich, old money, which keeps getting bigger and bigger. They sort of run countries because they lobby and they do all sorts of things. Like you would understand the oil in the US, and some particular political parties want it to go a bit greener and go into solar and wind farms. Well, that doesn't suit the people, that the oligarchies that own huge swaths of land with oil on it, and the people with coal. So that's how it works. Remember there was I'm trying to think, was it John Kasich in his state in the US, huge coal mines. Now he said, and he was being brutally honest, he said, I truly believe that climate change is real and we have to do something about it. But however, my state's still going to be digging up the coal. Here, you'd call Jeff Bezos new money, I suppose. all things like that come to an end eventually. In one form or another, Bezos's money will be stolen from him. Trust me. Old money doesn't like new money. The reason why we're heading back that way is because you've got a lot of right-wing governments in power who love the 1%. What does the 1% get out of someone like Trump? Well, yeah, there's some drill in Alaska now, whatever you like. Pull out of the Paris Agreement, you name it. Let's keep digging, yeah. And that 1% gets richer. If you ask the average American, has your wages been over the last 25 years ago? Not much movement. And what's about the price of cost of living? We can barely meet our ends. But the 1%, the rich, they have got all the money. Nouveau riche, yes, an old term. You read that in the Playboy magazine. I'm glad you're reading the articles, Gringo. That's the main thing. But there's no doubt the disparity, the rich and poor, is just getting wider. It come unstuck a little bit. You know, this has been going on for 300 years, since the 17th century, where oligarchies and older money, they see what happens. I'll give you, the US is the best example to show you, is 1% of the population make 60% of the profit and pay 1% of the tax. The other people, they're normal, average people, pay about, I don't know, 25 to 30 cents on the dollar in tax. But the rich people don't. They make 4 to 5% every year on whatever wealth they've got. They don't even have to work. It's just accumulated wealth. Whereas the average Joe Blow goes backwards, has hardly any money. In the 50s and 60s in America, one person could work, and you see all those old ads where mother's going down the shop to get food for father. Kids are playing in the garden. Mum never used to have to work. Now they all work, if there is work to go to. Yeah, look, I mean, in the last 4 weeks, this talk of about, you know, boosting the unemployment payments for Americans, nothing's happened. It's all talk and waffle. People are going hungry. People don't have any money. The government sit there and say, yeah, we'll get round to it. You're not important. I just, on the social and racial unrest in America, it's not really a tourist destination, if you know what I mean. They are so divided on so many subjects. Yep, I think that's universal. Because like the virus itself, it takes weeks and months for the death toll to start going up, but that's just an accumulation of time. People get sick and then hang in there for 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 days, and sadly they pass away. It's no different with the economy. At the moment, all this money being printed looks good, and on the surface, it looks like everything's okay, but it ain't. It just means when the crunch comes, it'll be everywhere. Everything is so entwined. The stock market's a joke at the moment. Earnings season starts now in earnest for most companies around the world. Normally September, October, November, December, they're big earnings reports. And all these overinflated share prices, when they realise that no one's getting a dividend and there's no money and putting people off, it will tank everywhere at the same time. It's going to be one of those unique experiences that the real world will reflect to the share market what reality is. 30% unemployment, no one's got jobs, tight for money. Republican right-wing workers saying there will be a revolution if... No, there won't. I'm going to tell you what I foresee is a kerfuffle for sure, but these so-called right wings, they're very loud. You know, it's like a bloke in a bar who's happy to yell at a woman, but when he faces a man, he sort of doesn't say anything. What will happen, and I truly believe this with much conviction, is that the colour of Mr. Trump's skin will reflect the jumpsuit he'll be wearing around May of next year. He won't be alone though. It's thumping time. And that's if he doesn't do anything stupid between now and January the 21st. There's a reckoning coming for sure. There's so much deception, corruption, lies, divisiveness, and no leadership. And I only can see one result, is that if he was a normal US citizen right now, he couldn't do these vetoes. He couldn't do this, getting the Senate to block his impeachment. As a normal citizen, he's open slather. He has nothing to look forward to, is what I'm saying. But the old karma, what goes around comes around. Do I think Joe Biden is the perfect president for the US? Probably not. But there's one thing I've always found fascinating in Canada, Australia and the UK. We have universal healthcare. And we don't make a fuss about it. In the US, even on the Democratic side, there's people saying, oh no, we shouldn't have universal healthcare. And the Republicans basically don't want anything to know about that at all. And it's like they call people like that in the US like far left, liberal libtards. Yet around the rest of the Western world, we have universal healthcare. I did hear, I'm not sure if you know, but I'm pretty sure you do, Noam Chomsky. Have you heard of him? A very smart man. He's about 90 years old now, I think. But very articulate, he dissects information. He recently made a comparison, but he did put a caveat on it. Noam said Trump is worse than Hitler along two lines. Hitler really wanted to get rid of the Slavic and Jews. Trump wants to get rid of everyone, Noam said. But more importantly, it sounds very silly, but it's very true. Hitler had a plan. Trump doesn't have any plan. There is no international relations. There is no foreign affairs going on. There is no trade talks with allies. It's like nothing's happening. And we certainly don't bash Americans. Americans are good people. They're just not being... I always think that anyone who runs a country in any format, in any system, has one priority, first of all, to look after the safety, health, and welfare of the people. That's it. Just those three things would do if a leader looked after your health, safety, and welfare. Does that mean you become a socialist? No. It's like, if you asked an American, do you think Australia is a socialist country? They go, no. I said, well, we got universal healthcare, had it forever. UK had universal healthcare forever. Canada, the same. And then they might think, well, maybe you are a socialist. I'm not. I'm a rationalist. I don't mind 2.1% of my income each year going to a thing called Medicare, where if I get sick, I just go into a hospital and they fix me, and there is no bill. Yeah, look, I mean, the pharmaceuticals, particularly in the US, it's just unbelievable. Yeah, he did. But you would think, if I asked you as a father, and say you've got several kids and a wife and grandkids, what's your main goal? It would be to protect them, make sure their health is good, their education, etc., etc. That's exactly what a leader of a nation is employed for. That's it. We don't look, as the Australian Prime Minister is anything other than the man who currently has the job, and he has to do it well, or we'll boot him out. There is no pedestal for Australian Prime Ministers. It's as simple as that. They're there to do a job. Just like a meat worker, or a bus driver. If you're a bad bus driver, you lose your job. If you're a bad Prime Minister, you lose your job. It's like, I'm not having to go to Americans, but they tend to treat their presidents like Caesar. We've got to support our president, even though I didn't vote for him, we've got to support him. No, you don't. You're allowed to question. You're allowed to say, you're not doing a good job. Americans always say, we've got to protect our First Amendment. When someone squashes your ability to talk, you have to then question, who's he in it for? Like I say, if anyone wants to follow up on Noam Chomsky's views on the current president, they maybe get a bit of enlightenment. Both parties point to the other party as a boogeyman, yes they do, and tell the people that they have nowhere else to go. That's right, only I can save you. The people have bought this instead. Yeah, what they've bought is indoctrination. You know what I mean? It's like there was a classic interview on YouTube, I'd watched it a few weeks ago, where a reporter, and he wasn't biased towards Democrats or Republicans at all. He just was asking questions. He was asking questions like, what do you think about a woman being president? And one lady said, no, that's a man's job. And she went on to say, if a woman got in power with her hormones and, a bad monthly cycle, she might press the nuclear button. And the reporter said, well, I have to remind you that all wars have been started by men. Do you agree? And she went very silent for a while and said, yes. There is a small section in the US at the moment, and I mean 10%, that extreme white supremacist in some aspects, racist, bigots, who want to continue the chaos. And it's getting even worse as the days unfold. There was a reporter on Fox who didn't go outright and say, oh, the guy that shot those two protesters was a great man, but he said he was probably doing the public a service. And I'm thinking, do people actually listen to what they say? A white man went out and shot two black people, three, one's still recovering, in the riots. And I'm thinking, and you want to praise them? What you're saying, in effect, is he was white, so it was justified. Like I said to you before, that man who, and I haven't read all the article, but got shot 7 times in the back getting into his car. I'm pretty sure America has the capability and the technology to use a taser. Yeah, not 7 rounds of 38mm into someone's back. I don't know what the outrage in Canada, if you read that this morning and that say happened in Ontario, what you would think. If it happened in Sydney, in Australia, I know what I'd think. I'd be absolutely disgusted. Yeah, they're cajoled. They're not willing to look at logic, first of all. Does this sound right? And secondly, have an open process in the working out of what people say. And you don't take what people say, particularly politically, as gospel, because a lot of it is nonsense. I just can't believe it wouldn't happen in Australia, Gringo. If our Prime Minister behaved 1/100th of the way that the President in America does, we'd lynch him. you've got to have education that's accessible and affordable. You have to have healthcare where the rich and poor are treated the same. It's nonsensical not to look after the health of a nation. Healthy people work. Pretty simple. I've had a few people over here say, why you bother talking about American politics? I say because it affects my country and me. So I have every right to talk about it. Well, we know that the force of change is circumstance, and we've already talked about it. Mass unemployment, civil unrest, interracial tension, and without any leadership, there's a lot of things that will change. It's not going to be good in the next 6 to 12 months economically at all. It's going to be terrible. And look, let's just say for a moment, Joe Biden takes over as president. I mean, he's inheriting a nightmare. And it's not like he can click his fingers and fix it. It's years in the healing process. Economically, divisiveness, none of that gets fixed overnight. But it's always infuriated me that Americans don't get healthcare. In other words, an American gets sick or his daughter's sick, takes him to hospital, and it could be $2,000 he's got to pay. And it's like, wait a second. Why can't you take him to the hospital? It doesn't cost you anything. It works in my country, works in Canada, works in the UK. And to give you an idea, Australia is run by the Liberal Party, which is a right-wing party. The UK is run by a right-wing party. Justin Trudeau is left. But all three countries have universal healthcare. We're not socialists, if you know what I mean. Definitely not communists. We pay 2.1% of our income each year. Say if you earn 100,000, you pay 2,000, and it's taken out in your tax. In other words, say you're going to get a tax return of say 10 grand. Well, they take 2.1 out for your Medicare. But I had two operations in 2016. If I had to pay the bills, would have been close to 50,000. Cost me nothing. It's like, but I paid all these years into it. Do you know what I mean? So everyone's paying. Rich and poor pay the same levy. One of the biggest problems is the disparity in tax. And when I mean tax, I mean if I earn $1 million a year and you earn $50,000 a year, why should 25 to 30% of your income go to tax and I can get away with everything and pay next to nothing? Well, for me, it's fundamental healthcare. If you've got healthy people, they'll work. If they're unhealthy, can't afford healthcare, they just get sicker and sicker and they become a burden on society, way outweighing the cost of what would have been a small levy to give you universal healthcare. That's why Bernie Sanders got shot down, even within his own party and the Republicans. Bernie wants universal healthcare. He wants education to be free, even at a higher level, which is all great. You educate your people, you keep them healthy. You have a very strong, vibrant nation. But the powers that be and the lobbyists, they don't want to hear Bernie say, free? Free? And America is not a democracy. It's never been a democracy. The founding fathers made sure it wouldn't happen that way. That's why they've got electoral votes. means everybody in each part of the country has a fairly equal say. If you didn't do that, you just had the big cities voting, and people in the country would be ignored. Slavery caused a lot of things. And the problem is, if you're realistic, and I talked about the 1%ers before, the rest of us don't have chains on, but literally encapsulated in slavery even today. It still is. If you look at the facts of a working man and a family and what they've got at the end of each month, there's nothing left. It's designed that way. And that's what people don't understand. They think that that's just their lot. It's not. It's designed that way so you don't have any chance of climbing up the rail. Like George Carlin said, there's a huge party going on and we're not invited. But there will come a time on this planet, wherever it occurs, it will then spread. Like, I could give you a reference to something that I would assimilate what I'm saying to, and that's the Arab Spring. The outrage of people. You're seeing something similar. All the Hong Kong protesters in Hong Kong, it's been going on for a very long time. It's actually inspired people in Thailand to fight against their monarchy, which is breaking the law in Thailand. I've been to Thailand a couple of times. And they've reached the point they've realised the new king, after the old king died in Thailand, the new king assembled all his wealth and put it into his bank account. And that amount of money is over 90 billion, I believe. So the Thais have realised that the monarchy is for the monarchy, not for the people. And as we speak in Thailand, there are protests going on, just like they were in Hong Kong. So they were inspired by Hong Kong standing up to mainland China. You see what I'm saying? And then the Arab Spring, you saw what unfolded there. Whatever happens to break down the 1%ers, it will happen all around the globe. Yes, I was actually in Thailand when the old king died. And the nation mourned like you wouldn't believe. And I was very respectful. I wore white T-shirts. It's a sign of respect. Or black. You could wear black or white, but I showed my respect. Nearly everything closed down. And the people were genuinely mourning the loss of a long-reigning king. However, the son just decided to collect all the money and put it into his bank account. Sold everything off. It is. It's called Licest, isn't it? Or something like that. No, you got it. Majest. Yep, that's right. And you can do 15 years in jail. Or, under old law, could be executed. But the young people of Thailand, inspired by the Hong Kong students, I guess, followed suit. And it's a big thing in Thailand at the moment. It's huge. The military, as you know, run Thailand. And I think since 1945, the monarchy in Thailand, by law, is not head of state. It's just a monarchy. It's like a country figurehead. So it has no real power. But this guy's had enough power to scoop up all the money. And Thais are not happy. Yeah, Lee Gang. I thought it was something like that. But that's what will happen. Well, the reason I've given those examples is that what people have seen in the new king in Thailand is greed. And there's nothing for them. That will happen all around the globe. See, I fully understand the balances. There are Democratic voters, there are Republican voters, and then there's Trump supporters. So there are three parties going on. There's a lot of Republican people that don't like what they see. And when you've got the ex-president, George W. Bush, saying, I will be voting for Joe Biden, that's a big thing. I think what will happen is a lot of Republican people will swallow the bullet and say to themselves, yes, it's 4 years of what I don't want, but I don't want 4 more years of what I've been watching. I think a lot of people have concerns for the environment. Does that make you a greenie? Probably not. You're probably not a vegan, and you're not raiding into restaurants saying, telling people eating meat, they're bad. But you're concerned about the planet. I'm pretty sure I got your picture on that one, Gringo, because I am. I'm concerned. I've got 10 grandkids. So we have every right to think about things that aren't working. So I wouldn't say we're green. I say that we're concerned. And things need to change. Well, the planet's fighting back. My goodness, if logic was an observation that people would take note of. Australia burnt to the ground last year, and we could do the same this year. It literally burnt down, Australia. Canada, I think, had a bit of problems with the fires, but the US is now back in California. We're sending firefighters to the US as we speak. They're on board planes. Specialist firefighters are going from Australia to help California. But this is a new phenomenon where all these things, these are the words that people need to understand. There's a big difference between a bushfire or a raging fire and what they are now classifying nearly everywhere in Australia and now in California, catastrophic, uncontrollable. They're things that happen once every 100 years maybe. And now it's normal. I saw that, I watched that. That was Laura, I think. I think it hit near, what was that place, Lake something? I think it hit Cameron first, but then Lake. But yeah, hopefully a lot of people are safe in that, because any storm, it's the water that worries me in cyclones or hurricanes. Yep, we lose the bees, we're in trouble. It's like I've always said when people say, oh, you know, you know the story about the Georgia Guidestones and the people, the evil people of the planet want to get us down to 500,000. No, they don't. That's not true. The more slaves you had, the better it is. That was a saying from an old pharaoh. More slaves, it'd make life better. And if it was their goal to reduce the population down to 500,000, this goes back about, I don't know, 60 years? Eugenic theory? 60 years ago, it was about when I was born, there was 2.5 billion people on the planet. Now there's close to 8 billion. So whatever the eugenic evil people are doing, they're doing something wrong. Yep. What we need to understand is that this planet will do some cleansing of its own. And there's nothing, we can't stop nature. Nature is unstoppable. When things change drastically, and that's the problem with greed, is that even the big corporations, until half of, say, the Florida Peninsula falls into the ocean, then maybe they'll do something. In other words, they will want the catastrophe first to prove that the shit has hit the fan, and then it's too late. Yep, it will. Like, I often laugh at people say the world is coming to an end. I'm thinking, nah, the world's good. We might be coming to an end. The planet's not going anywhere. We're fortunate that the air we breathe makes us possible to live, and the abundance of land and fish and food allows us to live. But if we stuff all that up, the planet will still be here without us. I remember David Attenborough's study with another Oxford University professor many, many years ago proved without doubt that every human on this planet could disappear and the planet would get back to a balance. Species would still evolve and species would still become extinct. That's the nature of evolution. So that's not a problem. So climate change is not a problem until it's a major issue. And unfortunately, the greed of people is greed only. That's all it is. It's just greed. If we were 30 people living in the bush and we thought, well, we've got to do something different, our environment's collapsing, we'd do it. There's no profit involved in that, of course, other than the profit of surviving and living better. Whereas greedy 1%ers don't care. They don't care. They literally do not care. There is no concern on their part. So, like I said about the example of Hong Kong and the people in Thailand watching that and doing something themselves, and it's all getting down to either power or greed. Power in the Hong Kong case from China, and greed from a very greedy monarch in Thailand. So what does that mean? Well, it still proves to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that the 1% may be the richest, but they're only 1%. And we're 99%. And we can change things. That's how it works in reality. We just got to get enough people to say, do we want change? Yeah. And it's coming. It's going to be forced. And this is what I just said about until a catastrophe happens. Believe me, the 1%ers are going to lose a lot of money if the economies around the globe really hit rock bottom. They lose. They probably take off 30 or 40 years of profit and disappears because the value of something is only on what people are willing to pay. And no matter what it costs you to produce, if there's no demand, you're stuck with a lot of crap, whatever it is. It's proved recently, and you'll get to read books about it in the future, how the dramatic conflict between Russia and Saudi Arabia in regards to oil. They wanted to keep producing, but once consuming it. There were in the Gulf of Oman something like 4,000 oil tankers full of oil, and no one wanted it. That's supply and demand. Everyone stayed home, didn't drive their cars, no demand. That showed you very quickly how quickly it can happen. The people, the greedy people of the planet are thinking, geez, I've got 800 of those ships. My money is sitting in the middle of the ocean and I'm not making anything. The Hamptons, the richest property on Manhattan Island, New York City. You know, if people were thinking logic more than conspiracy, they come to the conclusion, logically, police are used to defend the rich. And it's like, people go, what? Yeah, the police are utilised to keep the wealthy where they are. Again, there's a party going on, and the rest of us aren't invited. I feel sorry for the police in many ways. Some people start off in the career of being a police officer with the absolute intent of trying to make their communities better. No, I have no doubts about that at all. And then they're told to do things that are against their nature. So if you've got, to give you a great example, there was some person with wealth that arrived in America, and all of a sudden he had like 60 assigned police officers on everywhere he went, which the taxpayer paid for. And it's like, so if you got money, you get protection. Sounds very much like the mafia, doesn't it? It is what it is. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Well, we all know what happens to mafia bosses. it's not going to be like Goldilocks. Like I said before, I don't want to tell Americans who to vote for. But I would say one thing, and that is vote for America. That's right, takes a half an hour longer to respond. Rich neighbourhood, yes, I think it's an African American walking around the perimeter. Can you come and check it? Yep, we're there now. Same African American's family in the Bronx phones up and says, we've heard gunshots, someone's screaming. Yeah, we'll get to it, don't worry. Maybe Thursday, all right? That's how it works. And that's what's got to change. It's just, like I say, that incident with the African American man being shot 4 times in the back. Come on, there's got to be tasers. There's got to be a couple of big burly blokes they can bring into the ground. Just shoot him like a dog? 7 times? I can't see any court not sending that police officer for a very long sentence, because that's murder. And what has the president said about it? Nothing. Nah. There were a few European countries in the 80s in particular that became very fascist. That died down a bit, and then it picked up again in the turn of this century. And in most cases, most of the people rise up against them. Well, I'm an ex-prison officer, I can tell you there's a couple of police officers that went to prison for killing people in the line of duty. And that's how it should be. You see, I could start a slogan, and I think it's a fair one. I don't want America to be great again. I want Americans to be happy. And that's one thing. If there was a happy scale in the US right now, I think it wouldn't barely register off 0. You don't have to be great. You don't have to be the king of the mountain. You don't have to be Caesar. You just need people that can want what everyone else wants. Safety, good health, employment, great education for their kids. If you asked families from all the countries of the globe, most of them would say that. They don't want to be the biggest and best. They don't want to control and rule. They just want their families to live a comfortable life without harassment, with prospects of work and good education. That's it. Most people would only ask for that. See, there's been 2 things over the last, well, it goes right back, and even JFK, you can include him. Probably the last 15 presidents could have all been indicted on the World Law Court. There's no exceptions, because of what the actions are. It's like there's an American law and then there's international law. And when some terrorist group blows up something, they're called terrorists. When the power is used around the globe against countries, invade, kill, they call them freedom fighters. It's the old saying, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's your perspective. I just don't get, this is just me and my logic, Gringo. 9/11 was terrible, and we lost Australians in 9/11, quite a lot of them. And it was awful. 3,000 odd people died. The virus in the US will probably be getting close to well over 200,000 by the election. And it's like everyone's numb. Oh, it's terrible. They don't even think of it as a national tragedy. Something's gone wrong when 200,000 people disappear, and it's okay. Exactly right. But sometimes, and just sometimes, the violence is only a reaction of a few. But even those that don't act violently will probably clap on when the violence occurs, because it's what they feel. It's not what they would do, but it's what they feel. The anger is so rampant. I don't condone violence on any level. But when someone has nothing left to lose, they will do anything. See, I have no doubt why John F. Kennedy was assassinated. It was that speech, the one that he gave, open and expressive about the powers around how countries are run, are ruining the country. And they didn't like it. They didn't like the civil rights movement. It's like Al Gore, an inconvenient truth, meaning that unless you agree with me as the president, everything's fake. Well, about 180,000 Americans aren't voting this year, Gringo, because they can't. They have no say. If you multiply 180,000 by normal family groups, which is about 40 to 50 people, you then multiply 200,000 by 50. Gets to be a very big figure. Well, that's called indoctrination, when people believe something that it's not, because it's said often enough. Well, the one thing, I'm on the outside looking into the US, and I've followed politics in the US for a very long time. There's absolutely no leadership on all levels. There is no foreign affair discussions with countries. It's either my way or the highway. There isn't any talk about, I remember promises made. This is one speech that I never forget, because I thought this will be interesting. Healthcare has always been an issue in the US. Donald Trump said, if I'm elected, in the first 4 weeks, I will replace Obamacare with Trump Care. I can hear crickets. Nothing.
Yeah, there is this crickets. Is that Gringo said that?
No, I said crickets. But I'm not an American. I don't get to have a say. I can have an opinion. And all I would ask Americans is to think of America. Is what you have today what you want for the future? That's all I'd say. You decide. If I was a Republican voter, I'd bite my tongue and vote for Biden, knowing that I'm only doing it for one reason. And after this 4 years, I hope we find someone in the Republican Party that I can put my faith back in. That's what I'd be thinking as a Republican voter. I mean, for us, looking in, it really is a case of I'm watching a country implode, literally implode on all levels. And it's like, when I was a kid, I used to admire America for their progressive and how people seem to have a better standard of living. And it's gone. Within 2 generations going back, it's gone. But you can only punch people so many times, and then they can't get up. But they can still vote. See, I guess in my logic, the reasons why Americans voted Trump in were 2 reasons. The system is corrupt, no doubt. So they wanted someone in to go in there and break it up. I get that. But the main reason is no one wanted Hillary as president. Let's be brutally honest. Hillary was the catalyst for people to say, nah, that's not going to happen. And I'm guaranteeing there are Democratic voters that voted for Trump because they didn't want Hillary. They're the same ones that will be voting for Biden for the same reason. And one thing I've always said, politicians are there to do a job. They can take the accolades if things go well, but they've got to stand up and say, oh, I stuffed up. Someone who doesn't have any humility and honesty doesn't garnish any respect. It's like an obese man sitting in a van demanding taxes without putting any effort in for the people. That's how it works. They stop giving. But like I say, around about May, if Biden wins, around about May or June, it won't be just the ex-president being roasted. There'll be quite a legion of Republicans and private sector people facing the music. Let's see what's unfold. I just cannot see America not collapsing if there's 4 more years. I just cannot see it. There's nothing left. When you've divided the people to such an extent and the economy's collapsed and people continue to be ill, you're in full-blown depression. Yep. The true systematic process of inequality is based on the fact that 1% gets 60% of the wealth. And is that fundamentally a capitalistic system? No. There is no real such thing as capitalism. People waffle on about that. There's capital, in other words, wealth. That's how people make their increased wealth every year. True capitalism wouldn't work. So we have a mixture of idealism in amongst what people think is a republic or a democracy. It's neither of those things. It simply means the rich will get richer and the poor will just get by. Like I said to you earlier, it's designed that way. If it was not designed that way and you worked even harder, gringo, and pushed yourself, you would get wealthy because of your efforts. But that's not how it works. Every generation, there's a collapse and they take most people's 401k money and they're back to square one. The wealthy get wealthier, the poor get to exist. That's got to change. It's not just racism, but it's the money people don't have on equality, so there's the inequality. It's the process of keeping people down that will eventually turn this planet. When people have had enough, they just need to see one example and the world will follow. I don't think, this is one thing I think, if you think of what I'm going to say now, maybe you'll agree with me. Electing Biden is like electing an ambulance driver. He's got so much damage to fix up. Any real policy changes won't be in the first 4 years at all. There are so many holes in society, divisions, the virus, the economy. You can't make fundamental changes, particularly when the economy of a country has collapsed. There's no money to do it. You might see a little bit of Hooverism. You might see people working in large numbers on infrastructure because, let's be honest, I was reading articles in America in the 80s about everything's collapsing and bridges and railway lines and roads and then all this talk about infrastructure that every year, every election you hear, nothing happens. I've read county reports saying they were promised $18 million to fix up 2 major county roads. Money didn't turn up. Didn't happen. Mind you, if you lived in a gated community in the Hamptons, imagine the roads are pretty spiffy. Gringo, imagine there's security guard on every gate. Like I say, you don't need to believe in any conspiracy when the facts are the rich get richer and the poor are allowed to exist. That's it. May comfort some people to bring up all these different conspiracies, but there is no conspiracy in it. It's how it's done. These evil rich pricks want to remain evil rich pricks. They don't want you, gringo, to get above your station, like me. The magpies have started singing, which is what they do this time of year. Nice sound, actually.
We've got one to Steve.
Yeah. You'll hear them in unison all around the district, millions of them singing to each other. Our airports are pretty good, I must admit, that is true. We've been to a few airports around the world that are a bit, whoa, that's a bit dicey. All right, my friend, we're going to hit the hay. So good talking with you. No, it's a magpie. It does sound a bit like a cow alarm. Oop. Magpies are a-singing. You have a great day, and we'll catch up with you again another time. Good night.